Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is looking at Virginia Jeffrey's, I can't pronounce her name properly, book, memoir, Nobody's Girl, where she makes a lot of massive allegations and a lot of suggestions into who, over and above Jeffrey Epstein, abused this woman over what looks like the length of her life. And there is a suggestion that a Prime Minister actually abused her. Now this bit's a bit weird because in the British version of the book, the word Prime has been deleted and it just suggests a minister. Yet across the world, the book editions there say Prime Minister. So I'm going to go through the people that she has accused in her book and also the descriptions that she's given. And then at the end, towards the end of this video, I'll look more in depth into this Prime Minister allegation that surprisingly disappeared from the UK versions of the book. So the first name is not a surprise, that's Jeffrey Epstein himself, who she described as her prime abuser, repeated sadistic assaults, including the first incident during one of these famous massages at his Palm Beach home when she was only 16. He groomed her, trafficked her, and used threats to silence her. The next one she accused was Ghislaine Maxwell herself, who was Epstein's associate and co-conspirator, serving 20 years sentence for trafficking. And she said that she participated in an initial assault with Epstein. She details Maxwell's undressing her, engaging in abuse together. Maxwell is portrayed as a recruiter who exploited her vulnerabilities, posing as a pseudo mother figure. The next one's a big name. Prince Andrew, Duke of York, nonetheless. He in the book, and I need to clarify, in the book, is accused of having sex with her 3 times, starting in March the 10th, 2001, when she was 17. Once in London, once in New York, and once in Epstein's Island during a group session with Epstein and, as she claims, underage girls. She described him as playing a guessing game about her age and referencing his own daughters. He settled a 2021 civil suit with her in 2022, however, denies all claims of this behaviour. Then one that's pretty disturbing is Sky Roberts, who was her father, who she alleges molested her starting at the age of 7. She claims that he traded her to family friends for abuse between the ages of 7 and 11 and may have accepted hush money from Epstein. He denies this in a statement included in the book. Then we get into Ron Eppinger, who abused her after she ran away from home as a teenager. She lived with him for 6 months in Miami while he trafficked her internationally. And this is a guy who owned the Perfect 10 modelling agency and was apparently a trafficker. Then she went on to the unnamed ones, where she just describes them. And the headline one there was, as I said earlier, is printed in international copies as a Prime Minister, but in the British copies is referred to as a well-known minister. And what she claimed here is, she described high-profile political leader who assaulted her, and really the description of this is quite explicit, and I'm not going to read it out, but the claims made in the book are of quite a tough type of abuse. So I'll come back to this one because I've got some more details and I want to look further into this one, which was a well-known Prime Minister if you read the book anywhere apart from the UK where it's a well-known minister. She then described a US Senator who she said forced him to have with him, and that aligns with past claims she had previously alleged that Senator George Mitchell, who has denied all allegations. She also in the book describes a US governor and who abused her sexually, and that ties together with allegations against former Governor Bill Richardson, who has now passed away, but before his death did deny these allegations. She talks about a gubernatorial candidate who later won in a western state. Now that, she says, was trafficked with no exact prior matches, but it would imply someone in a state like California or Colorado or the likes. She then claims that multiple billionaires and several unnamed wealthy men who abused her. She alludes to Epstein's clients were in finance and tech, but avoided speculation, possibly to prevent any lawsuits. She talks about a construction worker who, this happened when she was in her teens before meeting Epstein, an escort service operator during the runaway period, a close family member when she was 7, that's over and above her own father. And she then did describe more unnamed powerful men. She mentions being present at dinners with figures like Bill Clinton and Al Gore, but didn't make any suggestions about them, just says that she was at dinners. But she did mention Donald Trump, and she described him positively. Friendly, offered a job in Mar-a-Lago with no wrongdoings alleged against Donald Trump. Now that is stated in the book, which isn't stated about the Bill Clintons and the Al Gores. She just claims that she met them. But she claims that she met Donald Trump. He was nice and said there was no wrongdoing with him. Make of that what you wish. She it traces her trauma back to age 6 and 7, which is quite disturbing with her family and her dad and acquaintances, which made her pretty vulnerable, I would imagine, for the rest of her life, if all her allegations are true, because these are allegations, I must remember. And in the bit where she's talking about Epstein and Maxwell, there's this network, just a web of rich and powerful people, as she explains it, who knew about the abuse but stayed silent, including attempts by Prince Andrew's team to hire internet trolls to harass her during her lawsuit, which again is an allegation. And she explains that she feared retaliation and wanted to focus more on the healing, not the litigation. And the book does reference 2019 court unseals for fuller context and figures like Mitchell and Richardson. So this is quite a troubling, worrying story so far. Now, obviously, being British, and this thing where I think it's fair to assume, by the facts laid in front of us, that because it's a Prime Minister, now that other countries do have Prime Ministers, but there's a couple of things we need to look at. The fact that the book in the UK takes the word prime out and just suggests a minister, which is more a wider scope. But, you know, when you narrow down where this woman lived, the fact that the abuses that she claims happened in America, happened in the UK, and happened on Epstein Island. Only one of those 3 locations have a Prime Minister. Behind me is Glasgow Sheriff Court, one of Europe's busiest courts. And because of that fact, we'll see every week several members of the public and podcasters, etc., facing trials in here for a number of things. However, an increase in number are for posts on social media, videos on YouTube, etc., etc., etc. And for that reason and that reason alone, I believe it would make sense for everybody who does podcasts as a minimum to join the Free Speech Union, because they will help protect you when the law turns on you. That doesn't give you carte blanche to say what you want as a member, but it does give you the protection to help you when the law goes wrong. This is not now only something that should be considered by podcasters, because we are seeing more and more people each day arrested. Normal people who don't even see themselves as civilian journalists, arrested for posts on social media. So it makes sense to join the Free Speech Union, because we live in this country in 2025. So that's 2 things that make it point to United Kingdom. Now I'm going to bring up a name, and that's only because of a few facts. I'm not suggesting this is the person. But at the time of her abuse, that ties in with a well-known Prime Minister in the United Kingdom who was Tony Blair. The other thing is, in the time of her, it was a relationship, if we call it that, with Epstein. Tony Blair was the Prime Minister, and he's the only one that's got any connection, any well-known Prime Minister of the UK that's got any connection with Epstein. However, Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book and flight logs, publicly available from court documents 2015 to 2019 unseals, show he had high-profile figures in his contact book, including Tony Blair, UK Prime Minister from 1997 to 2007. And he was a prominent global leader during this woman's time with Epstein. Blair is documented as having met Epstein socially, including 2002 dinners at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse, reported in the media in The Guardian in 2015. Now, this does nothing other than fuel more speculation, though no evidence confirms that Blair was involved in any criminal activities by Epstein. And in 2016, now the book's obviously just launched just now, and some people may think, well, that's the first time this allegations came up. But in 2016 deposition, which was unsealed in 2019 as part of her case versus Maxwell, she referenced being trafficked to various powerful men, including a Prime Minister. She didn't name anybody, but the timing was the late 90s and early 2000s. And at that time, some people hypothesised a connection then between Epstein and Blair, who was the leader of the United Kingdom at that time. No court documents of Jeffrey's statement directly accuse Blair of abuse. The speculation is largely driven by online discussions. So there we go. That is a synopsis of a book and discussing some of the claims made in that book, which may or may not be accurate. I make no claim as to any of her allegations in her book. I'm just trying to get a picture of time together, but I'm quite sure Tony Blair would have had nothing to do with Epstein's activities of such, like trafficking and abuse, and his meetings with him were of a non-criminal type. So, there we go. That's the video. If you want others to see it, please do me a favour, hit the thumbs up, stick your comments below, hit the share button. If you've not already done so, subscribe. And if you think you're subscribed, we'll double check and make sure you are, because a lot of people aren't, although they think they are. But more important than all of that, unless you're the type of person that abuses your power and status and wealth to the detriment of other people's health, sanity, then not you, but everyone else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.